Among collectors of haunted objects, there are certain items of renown, the ones that are not merely active, but are considered profoundly, deeply sorrowful. Object 1908, known as the Sailor Boy, is one such item. Its provenance is tragic and well documented. I've always been drawn to broken things. As an antique restorer, I see the beauty in the cracks and fades. It's a language of survival. I found him at a seaside flea market in a forgotten corner of Maine. He was lying amongst rusted anchors and old fishing nets, a hand-carved sailor doll from another time. His painted face was a roadmap of neglect, and his little blue uniform was faded by 100 years of sun. But it was his eyes that caught me. One was painted blue, chipped and sad. The other was a real seashell, small and pearlescent, placed in the socket like a strange, milky eye. The seller, a weathered old man with a fisherman's squint, told me. The local legend. "That's the Lighthouse Boy," he grunted. "Belonged to the keeper's son, back before the big storm of '08. They say the boy's still looking for his other eye." I smiled, assuming it was a story to charm the tourists. I bought him for a few dollars, thinking I could fix him up. I thought I was saving him. I didn't realize he was waiting to be found. My workshop is my sanctuary. It's hundreds of miles inland, and it always smells the same. Wood varnish, linseed oil, and old paper. The first night, I set the doll on my workbench, planning to start the restoration in the morning. I was working. Late, the only sound the soft scratch of my sandpaper. Then I smelled it. A sudden, sharp, unmistakable scent of cold, briny saltwater and wet sand. It was so strong, so out of place, it was like a wave had crashed into the room. I checked the windows, the vents. Nothing. It was impossible. The smell lingered for a minute, a ghostly homesick scent of the sea, then vanished as quickly as it came. And with it, I heard another sound, a faint, mournful cry that sounded like a distant foghorn. I looked over at the sailor doll, sitting silently on my bench. Its sad, painted face seemed to watch me, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The ocean was a long way away, but somehow I had brought it home with me. I woke the next morning telling myself I was imagining things. I walked into the workshop, coffee in hand, ready to start my day. And then I stopped dead. The doll was no longer sitting on the bench. It was lying on its side on the floor. And leading away from it, heading towards the large picture window, was a trail of small, wet footprints. They were the prints of a child's bare feet, perfectly formed in the thin layer of sawdust on the floor. As I watched, paralyzed, they began to fade, the water evaporating into the dry air until nothing was left but faint, dark outlines. I rushed to the window and looked out. The street was dry. There had been no rain. My heart hammered in my chest. This wasn't just a smell or a sound. Something had been in my workshop last night. Something small and wet and desperately trying to look outside. Something that had come out of the doll. The fisherman's words came back to me. The Lighthouse Boy. It wasn't just a nickname. I spent the day online, digging through the digital archives of the coastal town where I'd bought the doll. I searched for lighthouse records, for storms, for anything from 1908. I found it in a digitized newspaper article about a hurricane that had devastated the coast. The article mentioned a single casualty, Leo, the 10-year-old son of the Pemaquid Point lighthouse keeper. And there was a photo. My blood turned to ice. It was a picture of the keeper and his son, and in the boy's arms was my doll. But in the photo, it was new, and it had two perfectly painted blue eyes. The article said the boy was swept away by a rogue wave during the storm. His body was never found. His father claimed the boy had run outside in the middle of the hurricane, screaming that he had to save his sailor boy, who had fallen from the lighthouse window. The doll had been his whole world. That night, I couldn't bring myself to touch the doll. I just sat in the workshop, staring at it, the story of the lost little boy replaying in my mind. The air grew cold, and the smell of salt water returned, stronger than ever. And then I saw him. For just a moment, standing by the workbench, was the ghost of a little boy. He was small and pale, his old-fashioned sweater and trousers dripping with spectral sea water. He wasn't looking at me. He was just staring at the doll. His face, a mask of such intense, heartbreaking longing that it felt like a physical blow. He looked like he was shivering, a deep, soul-deep cold that would never leave him. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a threat. He was just a lost, lonely child, forever trapped in the moment of his greatest loss, his spirit tethered to the last thing he ever loved. And then he was gone, leaving only the cold and the lingering scent of the sea. He wanted something. That much was clear. But what? The haunting became more insistent. I would find the doll moved, always placed by the window, facing east, towards the distant coast. One night, I was sketching a design when a strange light filled the workshop. It was the doll. The seashell eye was glowing. It wasn't a reflection. It was an internal, pulsating light, a soft, ethereal blue that waxed and waned like a slow heartbeat. It cast watery patterns across my ceiling, making the whole room feel like it was underwater. It was hypnotic, beautiful, and utterly terrifying. The painted blue eye remained dark and dead, but the shell eye, it was alive. It was a beacon. The ghost wasn't just haunting the doll. He was trying to see through it, trying to show me something. He wasn't just looking for his eye. He was looking with it, and he wanted me to look too. I don't know why I did it. I felt drawn to the light. I reached out and gently touched the glowing seashell eye. The world exploded. I wasn't in my workshop anymore. I was in the ocean. The water was black and freezing. The waves were mountains of churning fury. I could feel the hurricane winds screaming in my ears. I saw through his eyes. I saw the doll, his beloved sailor boy, floating away from him. I felt his small body fighting against the current, his desperate, burning need to get his friend back. I felt the terror as a huge black wave rose up behind him, a wall of water that blotted out the sky. And I felt the crushing, icy impact as it all went dark. I gasped, stumbling back, my hand flying away from the doll. I was back in my workshop, my heart racing, the ghost of the freezing ocean still clinging to me. I finally understood. The doll wasn't haunted by his death. It was haunted by his final, failed act of love. There was no other choice. I couldn't fix the doll. I couldn't fix the boy. All I could do was finish what he started. I wrapped the sailor boy in a soft cloth, placed him in a box, and started driving. I drove all night, heading east, back to the coast, back to Maine, back to Pamukkale Point. A storm was rolling in, the sky a bruised purple, the wind howling against the car. It felt fitting. It felt like the world was mirroring the memory trapped in the doll. The closer I got to the lighthouse, the stronger the feeling became, a sense of melancholy peace, a feeling of going home. The doll sat silently in the passenger seat, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was just a stranger, finishing a journey for a little boy who had run out of time a century ago. It was the only thing I could do. The old lighthouse stood like a stone sentinel against the storm. The sea was a churning, gray monster, just as it must have been that night. I walked out onto the wet rocks, the wind tearing at my coat, and took the sailor boy out of his box. I stood at the edge of the water, the waves crashing at my feet, and I felt him next to me, the ghost of Leo. He was calm now. No shivering, no sadness. Just a quiet, patient waiting. He wasn't haunting me anymore. We were there together for the same purpose. He couldn't interact with the world, but I could. I was his hands. I held the doll out over the roaring water, the same water that had taken his life, and I prepared to give his friend back to the sea that had kept them apart for so long. I let him go. The doll fell into the surf and was immediately caught by a wave, pulled out into the churning gray. It floated for a moment, bobbing on the surface, and I saw the seashell eye give one last, soft glint of pearly light. Then another wave took it, and it was gone. I turned, and the ghost of Leo was gone too. The air was no longer cold. The smell of the sea was just the smell of the sea again. The haunting was over. I drove home in silence, the rising sun at my back. I never saw the doll or the ghost again. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined it all. But then I remember the feeling of the freezing ocean, the sound of the foghorn in my quiet workshop, and the heartbreaking sadness in a little boy's eyes. Some things don't want revenge. They don't want to hurt you. They just want to go home. And sometimes they just need a kind stranger to help them finish the journey.